Welcome to Clever Orbits, the lovely and amazing Star Trek podcast led by the talented, the hilarious,
Grix?
the
No,
lack
that's not my
in
name.
punctuality, Tyler Brett.
Tyler. Yes. Tyler Brantmeyer.
We call
this
him
guy's
Ace
brother.
for how he never misses a cue.
That's right, I'm pointing at him.
and also myself, Louis Brantmeyer. You may have heard our previous ones on Best of Both Worlds, Yesterday's Enterprise, or Shuttle Pod 1, all of which were very enjoyable. So tonight, what is the episode we're doing? Would you like to summarize it?
Cold Front. So, we're in the Enterprise era, all right? There's a guy, his name's Captain Jonathan Archer. Oh, shoot, wait, what? Was I supposed to preface that?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so Jonathan Archer is played by Scott Bakula. Scott Bakula, anyone who's ever seen any science fiction in the past 20 years knows he was one of the lead characters on a show called Quantum Leap.
He was
one of my favorites.
He was the one who kept leaping, hoping that his next leap would be the leap home.
Ah, yes, this ain't Trek.
Which, by the way, is one of my favorite figures of speech when I'm looking for something, hoping that the next box I open will be the one that leads me home.
Oh, man. I just moved, so I was looking for an Xbox controller, and I thought about it the same way.
Oh, man. So anyway, what happens in Cold Front?
It was in Cold Front, Jonathan Archer, okay? Great guy. I couldn't describe him. Just watch the episode, guys. We'll tell you about it, but watch it. You'll see his face. It's great. So the episode is all about continuing a plot line that was established in the pilot episode of the same season, the first season of Enterprise, called the Temporal Cold War. Now, there are many factions. One of them, which is featured prominently throughout the first season and onward, is the Cabal, which is made up of a race of aliens called the Suliban. Now, originally, they don't have a lot of technology that allows them to time travel and whatnot, but they are contacted by a benefactor from the future who is known as Future Guy. He ends up like just a silhouette and a voice inside of some weird space station. But they're given a bunch of technology and genetic enhancements, and now they basically serve this Cabal as soldiers that have a bunch of future technology and are trying to fight the Cold War in their own way. So this episode is basically all about the Enterprise being saved by Silik, who saves the Enterprise for his own purposes. They're encountering a phenomenon in space where a bunch of different alien races go to observe this natural phenomenon as part of a religious pilgrimage.
The Great Plume of Agasauria.
The Great Plume of Agasauria, that's right. And in one of the coolest episodes, you find out that Phlox attended Mass on Earth and other things as part of his his exposure to different alien cultures. It's pretty cool.
Actually,
we were Catholic and watched the episode.
The CGI of the Stellar Nursery with the Great Plume is like really beautiful. It's one of the best CGI in Enterprise.
This was 2001, and technology.
Oh yeah, especially for 2001.
Oh, it was great. Like, it was really beautiful. I'm guessing if you know what you're talking about, if you know what you're looking for, you could see the rough edges. But other than that, it was gorgeous. I always loved Star Trek for that, depicting space the way it does.
Let's do the summary. So it starts with Silik, right?
Yeah.
You're disabling me.
That's right. That's right. You're disabling me. The Future Guy, the benefactor, says, all right, so I'm going to take some of that stuff you love so much, like the compound red.
Genetic enhancements.
And genetic enhancements. You can't, like, cloak your body anymore. You just do without that. But apparently he can fix his face so it looks like an alien's face and not the ugly, like, grainy tennis ball that is all Suliban faces.
It's like a grainy green tennis ball.
It basically looks like that weird thing from the original series, big ball-looking
I did like their red suits, though.
That's the technical term, ball thing. What?
Their red suits were pretty cool. They're like red suits.
Oh, those, the suits. Yeah. I would love to be able to design my own Suliban suit. Those Cabal suits were really Yeah, they're like a different version of Daniel's suit from the 31st century. I can't remember.
Yeah, from
anyway,
the end of the season.
Yeah, we're about to tell them
we
about
don't
Daniel's
that yet.
Yeah.
So anyway, Silik's the stuff's being taken from him. Then we go to the Enterprise where. What happens?
And then from there, oh shoot, I don't know. A lot of stuff happens on the Enterprise.
Here. I'll take the reins for a second.
Yeah, good.
So one of the interesting things about this episode is there's never like with Star Trek Generations, First Contact, and the second half of the 7th season of Deep Space Nine. There's never a bad time, and there's never a time when I don't subconsciously want to watch it. So I'm either in a state of just having seen it, being about to watch it, or being subconsciously wanting to watch it and just looking forward to the next time when I decide I'll finally follow through. So it's a great episode. I've seen it far enough times. I've seen it enough times. So in the beginning, Archer and crew, they're traveling to the Stellarity, as we said. Great Prima Vega story. They went into this freighter captain. They come on board the ship. They're given a tour by Trip of the engine room. One of them alters something very subtly. Of course, one of them being a subtle Suliban. Bum, bum, bum.
That's right. Bum.
So that this overload that happens during an ion storm or like radiation surge or something doesn't destroy Enterprise. And so they're like, well, who did this? And the freighter captain's like, well, I don't know. If I did it, would there be some kind of reward? And he's like, can I claim it so I can get the money? Anyway, then we meet, somebody who we met in the very beginning of the episode because he was serving Archer breakfast, Crewman Daniels. It's not clear exactly what rank. I think he's just a crewman. Not even an ensign. But he wears the red stripe, so he's on kind of the engineering staff, I guess. And he walks up to Archer and says, hey, I think I know what happened on the Helix. And Archer's like, WTF, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, let me explain. And then he's like, come to my ready room. He's like, no, I think you should come to my quarters. So Archer goes to the quarters of Daniels. Daniels makes this kind of silly quip about his friend that he lives with there, majoring in chaos theory. And then, because it's so dirty and messy. And then Daniels shows Archer this thing called the Temporal Observatory. And it's like a holographic room that sprouts from this very small device. It's very interesting and really cool. And really pretty. Another great example of CGI. One of my favorites in all of Star Trek that monitors the entire timeline. And incursions, alterations, travel, and so Archer and Daniels starts being sort of enigmatic and quippy. Like he starts saying things like, Archer's saying like, you're like a time traveler, and he says that's one way of putting it, and you're just kind of like, so and then anyway, Archer's like, wow, so you're from the future. That's very interesting, and tells to Paul and Trip to help him to find Silik. So trusts Daniels, which is part of where it becomes very interesting, is because this guy has been masquerading as a member of my crew, and he's now telling me that the person who saved my ship is a bad guy, and I should help him to find that bad guy. And so Archer's just kind of confused, and this is one of those great things about the ambiguity and the complexity and the intricacy of the temporal Cold War. Is sometimes you've got factions fighting, doing things that you don't understand, not knowing who's right, who's wrong, and just kind of choosing one. So they help Daniels. Daniels finds Silik. Silik kills Daniels, or so it seems. We find this out later. Actually, in the scene itself, where Daniels gets killed, quote unquote, it's more like it's not plain and simple death. You can tell from the visual effects that it's like he's I think
based on our knowledge of the temporal, like the the fiction that Christopher Bennett writes.
Yeah, there's this thing called quantum tunneling where somebody can suddenly show up in the past and then leave without you noticing their appearance or their disappearance. And it's really cool and really quick and really efficient. And so Daniels does that a couple times later on. However, in this instance, it seems like he's using some sort of projection device to project himself back into the 22nd century, much like Future Guy does, except more palpably. And so what Sillick destroys is the sort of the version of Daniels that's in the 22nd century. He says, "Oh, did they tell you that the 22nd century would be your final resting place?" And which makes Sillick out to be more Sean Connery than anything else. But anyway,
he must have known quantum tunneling exists. I don't think he's very smart.
Yeah, he might have known some stuff about that. So they continue looking for Sillick. Archer has been shot by Sillick, wakes up, he's like, oh man, Daniels is dead? That's terrible. Let's find this Sillick guy. They go back to Daniels' quarters, find that Sillick has taken the temporal observatory. Archer's like, that could give an advantage to whoever has it in this temporal Cold War. We need to find Sillick. So they keep looking, they find Sillick. Archer and Sillick have a fist fight. There's some great music. Sillick tries to get to the shuttle bay.
Level stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it sounds like you're watching Voyager. The music is almost exactly.
I liked it. I liked Voyager, so I liked Voyager.
Me too.
Voyager
so
was all right. Don't ever hate it.
I loved it.
So anyway, Archer sort of chases Sillick down, shoots the temporal observatory out of his hand. Instead of shooting Sillick, which probably would have made more sense, Tyler mentioned before we started this call, which we can talk about in a second. But after that, Sillick leaves. There's this sort of epic scene where Sillick leaves through the shuttle bay doors, depressurizing the shuttle bay, and Archer is hanging out on the grill of one of these walkways above that, and he's like in contact with depressurized or depressurizing air, and like so there's this really kind of creepy, interesting, unsettling air that starts to arise at this point of the episode, where Archer gets back into the control room, which is sealed off, and starts like coughing and choking to get air back in. And the music, you can tell, also is trying to convey this. It's like this whole thing is kind of fucked up. Like WTF? What just happened? I have no idea what just happened, and my head is spinning. And then you get this unsettling sense for Archer, and that's one of the greatest accomplishments of the episode. Is like this naive, innocent, happy-go-lucky explorer of space suddenly realizes that there's something much more sinister, nefarious, dangerous afoot that he is partially responsible for now, because he knows, hey, there's something going on there. And so in the last scenes, you see this growing sense of haunting that follows him and grows on his face. So he comes back to talk to T'Pol, and he's got this thing that they gave them, a clock that charts time from the beginning of the universe. He's very pensive, and he's like, yeah, I haven't had any sleep. Would you help me write the report? She's like, I'd be happy to. In a rare show of like, the only thing that T'Pol did that was annoying in this episode, which is sort of a cool thing for her to not be annoying in the first season, or to not be kind of an impediment to what they're trying to accomplish, was she questioned time travel, like whether or not it could exist, and she was right in being skeptical. I mean, because they didn't have evidence that warranted belief in time travel. They had like future tech, but future tech could just be tech from now that's beyond what we can imagine. So anyway, she offers to help, and so she's very like personable throughout the episode, I feel. And at the very end, Archer walks out onto the bridge. He says, let's get out of here. And Mr. Reed put a lock on Daniel's quarters. God only knows what else is in there. And so, I mean, I mean, there ends up being something else in there. We find out later in Shockwave. But it makes me really want to watch Shockwave. It makes me want to watch Shockwave Part 1, come back to you, and record that immediately after this, which would be fun, I think. And then Shockwave Part 2 and then Future Tense. But, yeah, we could go on a whole temporal Cold War kick. How do you feel about that?
I don't know about today. We could do it
not
the
today,
subsequent Sundays.
We can be the future guy.
No,
be the future guy you want to see in the world.
Be the future. If I want to be the future guy I want to see in the world, he won't do anything, and he'll only say things from the shadows. Yeah.
Anyway, we can talk about him. He's a very interesting pseudo character. But at the very end of the episode, Archer's looking off into the view screen, into space, as they're leaving from the Stellar Nursery, and you see this glaze come over his face. He's like lost in thought, and you can tell he's very concerned, and he's trying to figure something out, but he's haggard, he's worn, he's tired, and you're kind of like, man, that poor guy, like, WTF is going on? And he's struggling with this now. He's bothered and he's hazy. And which is great, because the upshot of the whole episode is to create this sense that there's something much larger going on, this mythology, as they say in TV talk, that we don't know everything about, that maybe eventually we'll find out. And it's very reminiscent of the X-Files, where, and it's actually written, if I remember correctly, well, anyway, John Shiban, I think, played a part in this episode, and he was one of the writers for the X-Files, if I remember correctly. And in any case, it does this brilliant, beautiful job of asking questions that don't get answered, resting on uncertainty and confronting the great unknown of space and time travel in a way that like has a real, hardcore, sensible, perceivable emotional impact on Archer. And so he like bears this weight, and then the very last scene of the episode is Lieutenant Reed and some throwaway character, he's a red shirt guy, putting a lock on Daniel's quarters. Yeah, he got paid. And maybe he got laid. Yeah, I was the guy on that episode. I was crewman number 8.
That's right. Can I buy a drink?
All
right, anyway.
And then so there's this really creepy music, and it backs off from the shot of this lock. And you're like, what? And it's perfect, because it's a symbolic image, even foreshadowing, about what else is going on, and how do we find out, and what impact will it have, and who are we in the face of this, and what do we do, and should we really just ignore it and try to pretend it's not going on? I mean, like, all of these, this whole host and flurry of unanswered questions, it's like awesome. And so even though you could contend that the temporal Cold War wasn't exercised in the best possible way, it wasn't executed or implemented in the best possible way through the rest of the series,
ultimately,
I've said that, this episode was the greatest articulation of what was possible with that storyline, and the greatest establishment of tone, of like large-scale galactic temporal setting. I mean, it's all right there in the vision of the Temporal Observatory, and it was just I come back to it, and I've never really articulated fully all the little points about what I enjoy about it. But now, thanks to you guys listening to this recording capacity we've got, I've been able to say some of that. So anyway, that's my summary. I've got a couple pages of notes. Would you like to start? What's the first kind of stuff that you like to talk about?
I like to talk about, well, I don't know. I like to talk about how people say things. I like to talk about their makeup. I think Phlox's makeup is always, what do kids say? On fleek? No, that's like 2 years ago. On point. That's better. That's more pervasive as a slang. But the makeup, as always, I mean, hasn't Star Trek finally won an Academy Award solely for makeup? I think it was the first of the rebooted series. But especially in this episode, everyone, including Silic, disguised as a different alien, different species. But anyway, what else am I thinking about? One of the things that I really love about Cold Front. I don't know. You can talk about some of the things I hate, which I've noted privately to my brother a couple of times. but we can get into that. That's something. Ask me more specific questions. I may be able to access my brain palace.
So I'm dealing with my fever. I'm taking a temperature right now. But one thing. Right. How does warp drive work?
How does warp drive work? Dilithium crystals.
Well, okay, so we get a little hint about all of that. We don't get a fully expressed. We never get a fully expressed. My fever's gone down 1/10 of a point. Now I'm below 100. That's great. So, listeners, you'll note that we are troopers here. We like to be badasses and record even when we're dealing with potentially life-threatening illnesses. Anyway,
exactly.
So the
sore throat hurts like
hell to say words. This was well written. It's got a cool title, Cold Front, right? So it's like when there's a cool breeze washing over, like it's cold, and you get that sense from Archer, like he's like there are chills going up his spine. There's also, this is a front in the temporal Cold War, and then so it's the knowledge that confronts him. It's like cold. I like how the NX-01 reminds me of NASA more than Starfleet. It's like, what if NASA was halfway to Starfleet? Just the paneling, the lighting, the handlebars on the sides of the corridors.
That's what I got from it. Every time I looked at the Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, I got the feeling that they were looking towards our future, more so than what would have ultimately become the Star Trek timeline of the 23rd century, originally depicted in the original series. Like,
so
it felt really cool as an aesthetic. I agree.
The suits too, the rank insignia, the interesting mix of like something that looked kind of like TNG, but also sort of looked kind of like a spacesuit or a worker suit. Let's see, but there are a lot of good questions. It's the mystery of this episode, as I emphasized, makes it interesting and appealing. Who is Future Guy? Why is he doing what he's doing? What exactly does he want? Why does he seem to support the NX-01's mission by saving it? Or are they just after the tech, and they had to save the ship in order to get the tech? We don't know. We'll just make a passing reference. There's a whole other podcast we could do on Department of Temporal Investigations watching the clock. But what I'll do for now is I'll just quote a section from it. Let's see. Many assume, Alikum said in a slow voice as thin and reedy as an unclothed, gold-feathered body. It's a funny character. That the motive of any temporal interventionists operating in that era, particularly given their frequent entanglements with Jonathan Archer in the first Starship Enterprise, must have been to undermine the formation of the Federation. But that notion does not hold up under scrutiny. More than once, the Cabal actually aided Captain Archer. In September 2151, they averted sabotage that would have destroyed Enterprise. And in March 2153, the Cabal's sponsor personally communicated with Archer to warn him of the temporal intervention behind the Xindi attack on Earth. If anything, it appears the sponsor was concerned with preserving the events leading to the formation of the Federation. Let's see. So there's a complex articulation of the motives of that faction in that book that's really well done. There's the excitement of a spy film suffuses this story. You've got it's a Cold War, right? But to articulate that, it's really cool because you've got your faction and they're masquerading as somebody else and they're lying to you, but they're also trying to accomplish an objective. And so Daniels is to the side in the mess hall. There's one scene that I really love where they're just talking about religion. You mentioned this. You find out Phlox went to Mass. And Daniels is just there to the side. Like, you can kind of see him if you're paying close attention. And it's a very, subtle thing. He's, there observing. And anyway, he's undercover. And let's see. There's another thing that I really loved. The quote, when Archer finds out that the NX-01 is going to have guests, he says, "Tell Chef to prepare something." It's kind of the greatest articulation of his character in one line in the whole first season. He's kind of naive and kind of really rambunctious and excited, but kind of stumbling over himself. There are aliens coming onto our ship. We're really excited. We want to receive them. We're definitely going to prepare something. What do they like to eat? I don't know. That's a good question. Should I prepare them something? I don't know.
Prepare everything. This is happening.
Yeah. So, anyway, let's see. The show is respectful of religion and pluralism, but not dogmatic. Similar stance to time travel. The actual show itself doesn't say whether or not time travel is true. We don't know that. Based on what we observe. As even having the omniscient narrator point of view, which shows us what's going on for Silik over there in the helix, and which shows us what's going on in the NX-01, like, we still don't know that time travel is real. So religion is kind of like, I think, a simile or a metaphor or something for time travel here. There's this little funny moment where Reed leaves the bridge. Mayweather and Sato are there alone, and they're kind of fetishizing the captain's chair. It's funny because it's done all through Star Trek. Like, that's a special seat. If you sit on it, it looks different from up here. And so it's good, it's cute, it's fun. It was actually a great use of Mayweather because he's this junior officer sitting in the captain's chair. And it's like, you get these hardy astronaut-style moments in Enterprise. Like, like these are the kinds of things that normal people, not like the evolved Starfleet people would have. So I like that. How did Daniels start and get placed on Enterprise? What did he do before the events of this episode? I don't know. It's a very interesting question. I hope someone somewhere has written some fan fiction.
Yes.
Time Traveler, that's one. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead. It was a fleeting thought.
Well, Time Traveler, that's one way of putting it. Daniels is famous for never giving a straight answer. It's funny. In Shockwave, which is the season finale, later on, Daniels and Archer are having a conversation. Okay, so he comes back. Spoiler alert, fine. If you haven't watched the whole show, you should watch the whole show. It's really worth it. But Archer literally says to Daniels, he says, "You never give a straight answer, do you?" And then Daniels responds in classic cryptic Truman Daniels style, "Depends on the question." And it's like, he's still being cryptic. So anyway, the Temporal Observatory we mentioned was beautiful. Who is telling the truth? Is it Daniels? Did Daniels cause the antimatter cascade as a trap for Silik? Because that's what Silik claims. We don't know. Maybe he did, knowing that Silik would try to stop it and save the Enterprise. I mean, we don't have evidence.
Trying to lure him out. We don't know.
Yeah. So Daniels didn't die. How much of him was actually in the 22nd century? We don't know that either. This quantum tunneling thing, does it mean your whole person goes there? Does it mean just some kind of echoey shadow that can interface with matter? This episode is great because of its willingness to introduce intricacy and questions without immediate resolution. And then I already mentioned about the visual gesture at the end towards the creepy, dangerous unknown. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Great episode. Absolutely love and adore it.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Oh, man. When I move, the fever comes back. If I move quickly, it's like a shiver. But if I stay in one place for long periods, anyway.
Oh no!
So
drink water. Drink all the water.
I'm definitely doing that. So do you have anything else you'd like to add? I think we've done a pretty thorough review, but this is a two-person sport here. So.
All right. So I don't know if I should mention my major quibble with the episode.
Please. We've done all the positives. I clearly would give this 5 stars out of 4.
And I would give it 4.99. Yeah, there's a 0.01 problem with this episode, and that's the part where Archer's got Silik at phaser point, and Silik's got the technology in his hand, and then all of a sudden Archer shoots the technology out of his hand after they exchange words, and then Silik delivers that pretty badass line, like, "You may have just endangered your future, John." The problem with that is it takes a while for him. From the standpoint of someone holding a phaser to someone's head, it takes a while for him to reach that control room for the launch bay. So basically, his phaser right there, it should have shot him the moment he moved his foot.
Yeah, he could have shot
Silik
himself rather than the device in Silik's hand.
Yeah. I don't know if that's attributed more to Archer's naivete. Like, no, he just thought to shoot the device out of his hand. He didn't think to, like, wait, no, I should stun Silik. I need to question him. There must be a way we can detain him. He's not thinking about that. He's still in explorer mode. And he's trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Yeah. So maybe that's part of it. He exercised a little bit of restraint.
See, from the moment Archer gets shot by Silik and collapses and then wakes back up, there's a sense of urgent disquiet that follows him. And I think by this point in the episode, he just kind of, here's what I'm thinking he was thinking in that scene. He was thinking, I don't really want anything to do with these freaking people. Like, I'm done with this. I mean, he says something like this later on in season 4 in the beginning. He says, we're done with your temporal Cold War. But it's not clear that he had developed that perspective in this scene yet. However, it may be the case that he's just kind of frustrated. One of his crewmen is dead, who, at the beginning of the episode, Daniel says something like, more eggs, sir? And so like, Archer and this guy, they're close enough to where Daniels has been there for a long time. Like, he's been on the ship probably for months, and he's just a part of the crew. And so, to some extent, Archer had an attachment to him, had some sort of like, and I don't believe anybody else had died so far in the first season. I think that was the first death. And so his whole countenance changes. He's like really upset and pissed and kind of like sad and frustrated. And so, and he's also a little confused, like, what's really going on? I'm not sure. I'm making the best decision I can. So all of that leading up to this moment where he's just like, he could have shot Silik, but if he had shot Silik, would that have involved him more in the temporal Cold War? Meaning, would that have had him...
All right. I take my quibble back. You've given me too many reasons to accept his restraint.
Yeah.
So
so it seems like also maybe he was just trying to level the playing field, because this is really cool, because Archer gets really subtle here if you read it this way. He's not exactly choosing sides. He just knows that Silik is messing with his ship. He doesn't want that. But he also knows that Silik walking away with this piece of technology might not be a good thing. He knows that it might not. He's not for sure. So instead of stopping Silik, instead of like taking the technology, which could be like a beacon, it could draw more people to the Enterprise to like frickin' to mess with his mission, he just shoots the temporal observatory. And, so this is kind of also contradicted by the scene right after where he does sort of chase Silik. And, well, no, actually it fits. It fits. He chases Silik into the shuttle bay, but Silik leaves, and here's the confirmation is, to Paul's like, a ship just took Silik in. Do you want us to follow them? And Archer's like, no, let him go. And so, I mean, is that responsible? Is that the smartest, wisest decision? Is he like a good captain for ignoring this huge potential threat to all of reality? Or this acclaimed potential threat? We don't know. I mean, like, and so,
like, how could he even begin to judge how equipped he would be able to handle such a threat, even if he were to engage in trying to do so?
That's why it's so engaging, this episode, because there's a whole new level and layer of moral, ethical dilemmas and quandaries, and like shooting in the dark that Archer basically is compelled to follow with, and so or to deal with and to be with. And so you also see confirmation for his sort of, I don't even want to participate in this war anymore attitude when he has Reed shut Daniel's quarters up. Like, if he wanted to be involved, he would go in there, he would look around, he would see, try to investigate, all right, well, what's the truth? What's really going on here? He doesn't. He just kind of shuts it up and tries to ignore it, which, not the best idea, I don't feel, but, it's a legitimate sort of human response, and that's what makes, this different than what you would get from Sisko or Deep Space Nine, right? Where, Sisko would be kept up nights. I mean, Archer probably was kept up nights, but Sisko would be kept up by, like, trying to figure it all out. I feel like, anyway. That would have been really cool if we had seen an episode of DS9 where the temporal Cold War shows up, but of course they hadn't created that plot line yet.
Oh, man. It's retconning.
Yeah, and then if Cisco using his transcendental nature is basically a prophet at the end of these series, like deals with the temporal Cold War somehow, that would have been cool. I would have liked that. Yeah. So.
Me too. God, what could have been?
Yeah.
I really wish
anyway,
they had given at least a 5th season.
I'm glad I resolved your quandary. Yeah, we could talk some more about the temporal Cold War. So there's just in anticipating the future, what I think we're going to do with the next couple podcasts is Shockwave Part 1, Shockwave Part 2. These are 2 temporal Cold War episodes. Future Tense, which was also really named very well. Actually, Shockwave, at least in the heft of the first episode, is as good as Best of Both Worlds in the impact that it has on the Star Trek universe. I won't say it was resolved the best possible way, but it was executed gloriously.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
they didn't have a Best of Both Worlds Part 2, but the very beginning you could really tell. Oh no, that the proverbial shit has hit the fan. Like everything could be gone. Reality could be rewritten as we know it.
And then after that we get The Expanse, which is great because the whole 3rd season was very epic and enjoyable. And then we get I'm just going through all the temporal Cold War episodes. We get this one, Carpenter Street, which is kind of the shitty throwaway, just ignore it and pretend it didn't happen, temporal Cold War thing. It was like an excuse to have the characters walk the streets of Detroit and have them film out in Detroit, clearly.
What year was it? 2004.
Yeah, it's 2004. Yeah. And then we get Azadi Prime and 0 Hour. So these are all moments where, Daniels intervenes to try to get Archer to realize, this is part of the temporal Cold War. And then finally you get Stormfront, parts 1 and 2, which interesting enough, but not the best. And, definitely not the best resolution of the temporal Cold War. So anyway, I think probably what we should do, what would be fun, for me anyway, you let me know what you think, is to, the next couple podcasts, watch those episodes, take notes, and talk about them.
All on board. You've got me. Yeah, no. Everything you've been telling me about, you've clearly thought this out. I haven't. Let's be clear. I've watched them. I don't take notes. I can maybe make a voice note every now and then, but then it veers off into something completely different.
Your
I'm
point was
all on
awesome.
board with doing every single episode involving the temporal Cold War. Sounds great. Let's do that.
All right. Beautiful.
Yes.
And then maybe we can talk about, after we're done with the temporal Cold War, we can talk about the great rehabilitation of that storyline to be found in Watching the Clock by Christopher Bennett, and then we can talk about the DTI novels, which there have been 4 so far. There's one coming out later this year called Shield of the Gods. I'm pretty excited about. That are interesting.
Halfway through the 3rd one, so let's. Can't wait.
Yes, there's one thing. Have you gotten to the scene with that alien hybrid yet?
The alien hybrid. They had just transported into a warped future of the temporal. I don't know. It was a more militarized version of Jenna Noir's organization, where they aggressively utilize technology that allows them to travel to certain points in time. And
so you haven't gotten to the actual. There's a just when you're reading the collectors, be on the lookout because there's a really great scene later on that I will never get over. Actually, I really want to spoil it. I think I've spoiled it for you before. Can I say it just real quick?
Yeah, go for it. I mean,
it's a Borg
spoiler
dinosaur.
Alert. It's a Borg dinosaur. Oh yeah, you've told me about that.
Yeah,
that's the reason I bought the book. By the way, everyone. You said Borg dinosaur, and then my money just left my account out of nowhere. Like, actually, did I buy the book? I did.
It's great because in the scene, those shirts that say, "If you're happy and you know it, clap your O," and it's got a picture of the T-Rex.
Oh, but Borg dinosaurs, they have augmentations that allow one arm to at least reach the other arm almost. So it's like, look out, he's getting there.
Well, so he's got short arms, and when he tries to assimilate somebody, the Borg dinosaur, the short arms make him completely ineffectual. It's funny.
Well,
it's like,
he can just bite them.
Yeah,
his teeth could be tubules.
See, that's the other great thing. I think what I would really enjoy is to discuss the temporal Cold War first, and then once we've gone through the novels, to discuss the Borg, because those are the two great, most interesting, most entertaining, intricate, fascinating things that have been created and cultivated through Star Trek history. I mean, like the Borg more so than the TCW, but yeah. What do you say to that? Just long-term plans for this thing.
I say aye. Let's
aye. Great, awesome.
Do that. Yes.
Let us definitely do that. Well, yeah. So anyway, listeners, we really appreciate all of your attention and time and energy listening to this. And if you have some comments, definitely comment below. I'm presuming this will be visible on a website at some point. We're recording all these ahead of time so we can release them week by week once we find a good place to do so.
Yes. And
we'll also have the recurrence of Richard Futrell, who is our other partner in creating these. Just like the Red Letter Media guys, there's the three guys. I like to think of myself as the analog to the guy who talks like this. The pizza rolls. Yeah. I killed my wife, and this is a really great guy. It's really entertaining. Anyway, all right. To all of you, live long and prosper. Have a wonderful evening, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Including thoughts,
everybody.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And aliens in the future, if you listen to this.
Yeah.
I got nothing. This is Tyler Brandmeier, or Grix, signing off.
Jolan True.